pestilence spread to me. That was crazy. Got one right here. Down. Oh yeah. One's coming up right here.
One of them now.
They're both running it.
You think you're invincible, man?
You have it. You're out. Dude, you gotta revive yourself.
Look at this.
Think you're invincible? Huh? No. Sit down. Oh, run up the stairs like nothing can stop him, dog. That's what I'm saying. You wanna come up again? You wanna try again?
Got him.
Alright, let's go down there. Not getting back up. I've been
Careful, they're gonna be right on us.
Detected. Rogue assault turret.
Better run. Ooh. The Corrosive Intent is back. It has returned.
That was 5-2. We won.
Nice.
Nice.
Trauma detected.
He's trying to get me. Oh, he blind fired me, bro. Get him. Look at this dude. Pull it out. Get him, Alex.
Yeah. Hey, our build combination is crazy right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Got a visual on additional hostiles in the memorial compound.
This is heroic.
They're moving south.
Guys are pulled upstairs. We can lock that tunnel door from their control center.
Look at
Be able to transport those boards.
Look at that creeping death, bro. Did you see that?
Everybody.
Where you going?
Hey, if True Patriot drops a fucking first.
Legacy Week is back again, and the vote, unlike Week 1, was very close. Corrosive Intent won by just 6%. I'm really glad it did because it's time to see something different for a change. Hey everyone, I'm B Righteous from Identity, and we are here with another video. A build with one of the most underrated skills, which is also extremely hard to use in PvP. Not so much in PvE though, but very satisfying once you get the hang of it. I just want to give a shout out to a YouTuber whose videos are very easy on the ears to listen to and discusses topics relevant to everything that's going on with Division 2. His name is Gamey Daddy. He uploads every day and I believe you'll really find his videos cool to watch. So go check him out when you get a chance. The link is in the description. If you're new to my channel and interested in builds from DPS all the way to skill, then please drop a like and don't hesitate to subscribe. Corrosive Intent, a build that carries with it a skill that directly counters the very premise of this game. A cover shooter. Anyone who likes sitting on cover is not safe. With how the skill permeates through walls, makes it exceptional for keeping the pressure on enemies, leaving them out in the open and vulnerable. The purpose of this build is to create an area of denial for your opponent, which will then give your team an advantage on defense and offense. The Oxidizer also deals extra damage to armor, skills, and skill proxies. The only thing I'd say about this build is that it has a high skill gap playstyle, but if you can manage to pull it off, you will be an exceptional asset to your team. Let me show you what I got. Alright, so here we are, Corrosive Intent. Probably one of my most ambitious builds from TU6 because of how difficult this build is to play. Unlike Fire or Bleed, the Oxidizer doesn't hinder your movement in any way, so it allows the enemy you're fighting to move freely, giving them more of a chance to kill you. So you'll see in this build what I incorporated in order to help with that. For this build, I'm trying to make it as close as it was for TU6. The specialization I'm going with is Technician. It is essential that you use Technician with this, because when you're destroying skills and skill proxies and robot dogs, there's a talent on the skill tree called Dismantling, which does 12% extra damage to skill proxies and skills and robots and stuff like that. And this stacks with the Oxidizer's extra damage to skills and armor, along with the health damage you'll see. I'll show you more about it as I get to the parts in the build, okay? For my primary weapon, I'm using the Pyromaniac. One reason is that this is just a great AR. I mean, to have 25% damage to targets that are on fire is invaluable. And then after you get 3 kills, it applies automatic burning to your next target. This is going to be good for the holster that I have and the other talent that is crazy. Like, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, so the Pyromaniac is the main weapon that I'm using, and it has pretty good rolls. Before I said it was unrolled, but it was rolled, so this is what I got. Hopefully I can get a better one with more AR damage and health damage, because health damage in this build is very important. I was actually contemplating using this Chameleon that I have, which has max rolls all across the board. But the Chameleon is just not strong enough in PvP, and I figured the Pyromaniac is better with the way that I'm going with the build now. Secondary, of course, I'm running the Send-Off. You get 100% optimal range and perfectly rooted, which gives you extra skill damage while you're in cover, 30%. Why not use this weapon, right? For the pistol, the Liberty Exotic Pistol, which is very good for this build, because the Liberty also does extra damage to skills and skill proxies. Right? So you stack this on top of the Technician Specialization's talent on the skill tree. And this just, you know, it doesn't really do anything for you except that it has really high base damage. And that is better to use with the shield because that's exactly what the talent is for. Alright guys, this this mask is awesome. It's called the Hollow Man. Back in TU6, this gave you 50% hazard protection. Alright, so they changed this completely and made it 21% damage to health. This is a Dark Zone exclusive. I got this out of one of the boxes when I was farming, and it's a 1% drop rate. So I was very lucky to get this, and if any of you have this, congratulations. It has 21% health damage, and this, along with the 7.5% that I'm getting from my Pyromaniac, gives me 28.5% health damage total. So when I get to the skills, I'll show you exactly how this affects the skills that I'm using. What I realized is that it's not viable to run that low amount of armor in PvP. Maybe not even in PvE, but if you can be really careful in PvE, you can pull it off, right? PvP is different though. So I came to the conclusion that 1 million armor is my base that I'm gonna run from now on in PvP. So I rolled armor on this, and it came with explosive resistance, which I wish was a little bit higher, but you know how RNG is, right? For the chest piece, I'm going with the Murakami, and that's only for the 20% skill duration. Skill duration not only applies to your turrets that you throw on the ground or your hives or your decoys, but it also applies to the duration of the Oxidizer cloud that's on the ground. So my cloud lasts for 10 seconds. It could be more if I had more skill tier, but I wanted to make this a hybrid. I'll go into more detail about the Oxidizer once I get to that skill. But I rolled another armor core on here, and this is what I got. Because Murakami, I think it only comes as a skill tier. And for the talent, y'all, I have tag team, and I don't think that a lot of you use this talent, okay? Now, tag team, its description states that the last enemy you have damaged with a skill is marked. Dealing weapon damage to that enemy consumes the mark to reduce active cooldowns by 4 seconds. The cooldown is 4 seconds. Let me explain that to you a little bit, okay? So if you shoot an enemy with your Oxidizer, you're gonna see this icon pop up next to that last enemy you hit. So let's say they run away out of that cloud, and then somebody else runs into that cloud, then that enemy's gonna be marked. That's why it's so good to run with the Oxidizer, because once you hit them after they're marked, it reduces your cooldown by 4 seconds, so you keep getting your skills back. And without using hardwired, that's essential for the Oxidizer, because I think it has like a 20-second cooldown for each shot. The reason why tag team is so good with the Oxidizer is because, let's say somebody throws a turret on the ground, okay? Or in PvE, they throw those shields, the Rikers that drop those shields down. If you shoot your Oxidizer at those shields, it's just gonna stay there. So tag team is gonna keep reprocking on that turret. Every time it reprocs, you shoot it again with your weapon, you're gonna get 4 seconds reduced on your cooldown. It's amazing. Alright, so the holster is the Imperial Dynasty exotic holster. Remember I told you that this build was hard for me to get to work in PvP because when you shoot an Oxidizer at somebody, they just sit in there running around in the Oxidizer, and it gives them more of an opportunity to kill you. It doesn't set them on fire or make them bleed and slow their movement. This just sits on the ground. So this Imperial Dynasty helps me when I run up on enemies and engage them. It catches them on fire immediately, which is also why I'm using the Pyromaniac, because I get a 25% damage buff when enemies are on fire. So this really helps me out with sustainability, okay? And they're also buffing this and making the cooldown 35 seconds instead of 40. These attributes are locked. It's always going to have status effects and hazard protection. The backpack is a China Light Industries corporation. The first piece comes with explosive damage, and I'll tell you why once I get to the skills. China Light already drops a skill tier, and this is a great backpack. I mean, look at these stats. I rolled skill damage on here, and it already came with 9.5% status effects. The talent is Creeping Death, which is another talent they're going to buff. The description states when you apply a status effect, it is also applied to all enemies within 5 meters of your target. The cooldown is 20 seconds. This is getting buffed to 9 meters. I can't tell you how many times I've ambushed enemies in PvP and PvE, and all of them caught on fire. This is the perfect ambush mechanic, the perfect defensive mechanic. Stacked with the Imperial Dynasty, as soon as you run up on somebody, 6 to 7, depending on how many people are around, get caught on fire all at one time. It is nuts. It is just the perfect combination that you can use with the Imperial Dynasty. I'm using Fenris group gloves for the AR damage, and pretty good gloves, I must say. 15% weapon damage, almost max skill damage, and max crit chance. Now, I said before that critical hit chance is good to stack to compensate for your damage when you have a hybrid build. I don't have as much critical hit chance on here just because of the rolls I got, but I'm more so going with, you know, the fire and the oxidizer's damage to help me out. You have so many things you can go to as far as combat in this build that you do need weapon damage, but not as much as you would on another build. For the knee pads, I have Wyvern wear. The one piece gives you skill damage. So on this build, that's what you want. You want to roll skill damage mainly, because that's what you're going to be using mostly, especially since the oxidizer is not as effective against people who are moving around. The oxidizer shines when enemies are in cover. That's where you get most of your utility, because it makes the enemy vulnerable and it keeps them out in the open. I mean, I'm sure you saw the gameplay when I just kept the pressure on them over and over again. It's great. I rolled 15% weapon damage on here, and it came with 10% explosive resistance. Now I have 6.5% explosive resistance on my Hollow Man mask, which gives me a nice little chunk. 16.5% explosive resistance. I think it'll save you in some cases. And it just has weapon handling. All right, to the skills. Okay, the first skill I'm running with, like before, the explosive Seeker Mine. This one is the strongest out of the 3, and it applies a bleed status effect on an affected target. But remember, I'm running tag team, right? So this applies to when I hit somebody with my Seeker Mine as well. So the last person you hit with your Seeker Mine, it tags them. So when you shoot them, then it reduces your cooldown by 4 seconds. And then let's say your oxidizer's on the ground, it's doing the same thing. So tag team is what you want to run with this. It does almost 2.5 million damage in PvE and almost 500,000 damage in PvP. This skill also keeps enemies on the move because it's a bunker buster. You send this thing out, who's gonna sit in cover? So then when you shoot your oxidizer on the cover that you send this to, they're not gonna get on that cover at all. Because it's a tier 3, then it gives me 30% damage and 15% radius. Now before, this thing in TU6, it didn't have a radius added onto it, but the higher you get in skill tier, the higher the radius. I mean, can you imagine if this thing was overcharged? 200% radius? Nobody's jumping away from that. But even 15% radius is amazing, right? All right, for the main part of this build, the most underrated skill in the game, I believe, the Chem Launcher Oxidizer. First of all, this oxidizer is not a status effect. Don't be fooled. You might think it is because of the cloud and because of how Chem Launcher Firestarter is a status effect, and also even the Foam Launcher is a status effect. This is the only thing that's not. So if you have hazard protection, it won't save you. It's just doing regular damage as if it was skill damage. That's why I said you should stack skill damage on your build. All right. The oxidizer canister releases a cloud of corrosive gas that damages enemies' armor, skill proxies, and causes damage over time. Now that's extra damage to armor and skill proxies, stacked on top of the 12% from dismantling, and also the damage that it does to health. Now remember I said that the Hollow Man mask has 21% damage to health, plus the 7.5 from my Pyromaniac, 28.5% damage to health, okay? Did you know that those heavies that walk around, they don't have armor? They do have armor on the surface, but that bar that you see is health. So that's the health of the armor. The turrets that people drop, that's health. Any skill that anybody drops is health. So this does that health damage to them, which is why it melts those turrets and skill proxies so fast. That's why I said the Hollow Man mask is essential for this build. And if you don't have it, I mean, just go ahead and farm for it. It's a DZ exclusive. You can get it if you're consistent. Eventually it'll drop. I got a 5 ammo count with a 20-second cooldown. And again, it's not really 20 seconds because while you're shooting an enemy, the cooldown gets dropped. The cooldown reduces with tag team. The cloud radius is almost 4 meters and the duration is basically 10 seconds. Now this cloud damage is 105,000 per tick. So if you stack these on top of each other, let's say you shoot 3 clouds on the ground, instead of this being 105,000, it's gonna be 315,000 or more. And this is also gonna be tripled because these clouds stack on top of each other. It's a skill tier 3, which gives me an extra 3 ammo, 6% radius and 60% duration, 30% damage. This is a great skill. If you learn how to use it correctly, you can become a person in the team that has a role that people need in legendary missions and heroic missions. This build will really help out in so many different situations. So that's it for this build. Go ahead and try this out. If you have the Hollow Man, congratulations to you. If you don't, go ahead and farm for it. But amongst other things, this build is very fun to play. Let me know down in the comments what you think about it. If you have done this build, let me know which way you made it. So if this build helped you out in any way, please drop a like. And if you're new to my channel, don't hesitate to subscribe. I drop dedicated builds every week and I think you'll like it here. Until I see you in my next video, be right out.